Hello and welcome to another episode of, I'm going to say it right this time, Two Irish Guys Discussing Software. This is episode 19. My name is Tomás O'Leary. I'm joined, as always, by my good pal and work colleague, Brendan Walsh. How are you?
I'm very good. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're
listening from. Yeah, good to see you. So we have a very interesting podcast today. It's been a month since we last spoke to everybody, and this time we're going to look at the law and where the law meets the software world and the mega vendors. One could argue that the law should be doing a lot more, but we have a really special guest. Pam Fulmer will be joining us in about 15-20 minutes time to tell us about her experiences. And Pam is the co-founder of the Tactical Law Group, and she has a lot of experience with these mega vendors, and particularly around intellectual property rights, commercial disputes, licensing disputes.
I'd say they generate lots of opportunity.
I'd say so. I'd say audit comes in there, and she's quite a lot of experience in audit. So we'll come to Pam shortly. But again, we're now started December. There's a vaccine.
The vaccines.
Apparently there's 200 on the way.
Loads of them.
What does it mean? Are we going to be back on the road?
Well, I really hope so.
We've got to be traveling. Ryanair just bought 75 airplanes today.
Yeah.
Boeing, the Boeing plane that was taken off the out of the sky.
The Air Max.
The Air Max, yeah. So they just bought 75 with more. They've over 200 of them.
I might let them fly for a little while. Might stick to a Boeing 737s. But yeah, it looks like a couple of vaccines out there. They're going to start issuing them in the UK, I think. Almost next week, So, which is crazy to think about. I mean, the vaccine has only been in development. Talk about development cycles. Normally takes 10 years to develop a vaccine and test it and get it approved. But you can do it in 11 months. It appears when you put your mind to it, and multiple companies at the same time. So it's pretty crazy. And
and it's the Brits are out first. Fair play to them. I wonder how much of that is political. But I was at home the other day, and I was it 2 days ago. I got my wife Leona. She says to me, "When are you going to travel again?" Now I don't think it was a question that went, "Oh, I'm just curious to know when you're traveling." I think it was quite a loaded question. I think underneath it she meant, please travel. Lockdown has been, it's had its good moments and it's had its tricky moments, but in this particular day, a couple of days ago, I was definitely getting the boot. When you go, my daughter then goes to me, when are you going to America?
I get that all the time, because and when you go, can you bring me back XYZ cosmetics that we can't get?
I didn't get that. I just said, would you just go? I got to just go. And will you go now, please? So I
think I had one of those moments yesterday, but I won't talk about it. But it's being in the house a lot with your nearest and dearest is great, but it has its limitations.
But we're now open again here in Ireland. We're way open again. It's
we're in level 3.3 or something.
The restaurants and bars are open on Friday. The bar was open the other day. I notice you haven't availed of...
No, I haven't. And before your wife sends me a WhatsApp saying, when am I going to get my haircut, as she did before, I have one booked. I have it booked for Friday morning, first thing.
Oh, good man.
Yeah, man, because we have a big meeting. We have our town hall on Friday in work, and I can't be looking as dishevelled.
I'm glad this is a podcast. I'm glad this is a podcast. We listen. There's been a load of news. There's been too much news, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it has been a busy news season.
We've had interesting things. We've had Elon Musk passing out Bill Gates. That's about the worst story you could find on Microsoft. Actually, there was another Microsoft story that you hear about. Microsoft are tracking us. They have these analytics. I don't know if you get them. As Microsoft, we use Microsoft obviously in the work, and every day now I get this, here is your performance.
Oh yeah.
I'm going, what? And so I was thinking of this thing recently.
Who turned that on? Because I saw it the other day, and I just keep deleting it. And then I was meaning to tell our security guy to say, is this a cyber attack? But actually, that's the thing.
But it's called a productivity score.
Yeah.
And there's people now saying this is like surveillance.
Mine should be telling me go to sleep. You can log off or something.
But it's like 1984 or Brave New World or something. We're getting surveillance by the technology.
We have to turn that baby off, I think.
I think so. I don't like them knowing too much. And we've had our old story TikTok. Remember Larry on TikTok? Yeah. It looks like it's not happened yet, but there's
extensions on extensions. It's a bit like Brexit. It comes to the end, and there might be another extension, but. Another, what is it, a 5-day extension on the back of the last 2-week extension? Who knows?
Listen, I think they just got to keep giving extensions.
They're also in the courts. They're fighting it in their courts as well. They're trying to fight the ban. So maybe we can talk about that a bit later on.
Oh, yeah. Well, maybe Pam might have a view on that, actually. Yeah, that would be anything that's in the courts. I'd say she does. I've no doubt. We certainly had, speaking of in the dock, we had Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg back in the dock with the Judiciary Committee around the recent election. I mean, obviously, we had the recent election in the United States since we last spoke on this topic around misinformation. So I guess they've been Zooming or Teamsing or whatever they do to get into, probably not Zoom or Team actually, whatever technology they use. They've been linking in with the I actually can't even use that. I don't know what terminology. They're in there virtually. Somehow they're there. But I'd say they're sick and tired of going to Washington in whatever.
Would you get any work done?
Unbelievable. We had some good news here in Europe. We had the European Parliament have endorsed the right to repair.
Oh, very good.
Yes, first time. That was a couple of weeks ago. So we're making some good progress on that here in Europe.
Work on that area?
Yeah, with Free ICT Europe. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, we're not the only people involved in that.
No,
but
sure.
But it's more consumer orientated, but it's setting the kind of standards now for business and extending those rights. So we got to get them into the software world and get them focused on some of things like audit. But it's been really interesting. I believe there's been always results, but this is kind of like we're getting into results season, aren't we?
Yeah, there's a couple of results. It's kind of funny because there's a couple of companies that have results at the end of October, which we now know about in the last few days, which you could talk about later on. It depends on which company there is, but there's been a few results. There's been a few updates since the last podcast. I mean, the best place to start is probably with our number one friend and foe, IBM.
Oh, yeah.
We love IBM, as everybody knows and who listens to this podcast. But so just taking us back to episode 18, because this is 19, and we had a very interesting podcast.
Oh, yeah, the big story.
The big story where we had Rowan O'Donoghue and Christian Fellini on talking about security the last day. And at the end during that podcast, we had IBM's Q3 results.
Yeah.
So just to give everybody who didn't listen to episode 18 yet.
This is a new thing now.
Yeah.
This is great. A summary.
A summary. But you recall a few things. The revenue was down year on year. We had the GTS division was down. They had their third quarter of declining revenue at the time. Not dissimilar to Q3 2019 when they were in their fifth quarter of declining revenue. Just giving you some context for what I'm going to say next. And they were announcing, which was the big news of the day in the laptop, because they were selling off their GTS division predominantly into Nuco, and IBM was moving forward as IBM.
Do we have a name?
No, Nuco. Not yet. Right. But in the build-up to giving themselves a new name, of course, what they have to do is they don't have to resource action people.
Resource.
Yeah, you love that.
I think they resource action people.
They have a new name. They have a consultation process, I think is what it's called now. But basically, it's not good news. I know we're making fun of it a little bit, but up to 10,000 people, 10,000 employees in Europe.
I heard that.
Could be laid off. Which is huge. Actually, it's 1 in 5.
Yeah, because they've already shrunk. 10,000 people to IBM here in Europe, or even in the US, would have been maybe less than 10% of the employee base.
Might have been such a big deal, but it's 1/5.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is and close to home in the UK and Ireland, it could be up to 2,000 positions, maybe 2,300 positions in Germany, but it's everywhere. It's across Northern Europe, Italy, UK, France. So and it's so that's within the GTS division, which is going to be part of Nuco because they need to slim it down, and they're
who's going to be left? There's nobody. who there was certainly nobody who was there 10 or 15 yeyears ago we're talking about.
All they talk about is the reskilling, basically the reskilling anybody who's under the age of 40, because we've had previous discussion this program about ageism and the over 40s being targeted for layoffs, etc., because they want younger people who they want to train. They don't want to train necessarily older people, or so it's reported. But yeah, so big news. So I mean, not surprising on the back of the results of last quarter, we're seeing these layoffs. And then they did say last quarter that they were going to free up cash to buy new companies. So what's going on there?
Well, I did hear they bought a company. I couldn't find any massive news on it. I saw a news feed on IBM's website a company called Instana. They bought a company called Instana. It looks like it does performance monitoring for Watson. Right. You know Watson is the the Jeopardy quiz. Yeah. So somebody to monitor what Watson's up to.
It's all about AI.
I thought IBM had lots of monitoring tools.
Lots of monitoring tools.
Yeah.
Tivoli monitoring, Netcool monitoring, performance management, all these tools.
Yeah, they've got loads.
It's another one.
Another one. Yeah. So it's typical IBM. So what else has been happening? Any of the other guys, big guys, been doing anything?
Yeah. Well, there has been a few interesting announcements. So let's look at some of the bigger guys. So Salesforce. So some big news here. But
They're in the news. Yeah.
They're in the news. But let me start with the results, because that's kind of a lead into what they were doing on the acquisition front. But yeah, the actual results weren't too bad. They 5.4 billion or something like that for the quarter. The revenue grew 20% year on year. Compares last quarter with a 29% increase, and everything's up. Their cloud product, which is the typical Salesforce product, keeping track of customers and so on, that delivered 1.3 billion in revenue. That's up 12%, which you would expect with everybody moving to cloud versions of operating environments and software with working from home. Their service cloud, which is used for handling customer service, was up 1.4 million, up to 1.4 billion, sorry, up 21%. Their Salesforce platform, which includes Tableau, you remember Tableau, the visualization software, that was up to 1.6 billion, up 24%. So all good. Their stock price had been up about $100 since the start of the year, like $100.
Are they then the biggest cloud company, cloud software company?
Well, they were, and they were certainly tracking that way. They'd also joined the Dow Jones Industrial Average during the quarter. So some interesting names actually dropped out of the Dow Jones, the DJIA. It's easy for me to say. Exxon, Pfizer, who have just created a new vaccine. Maybe they'll rejoin the Dow Jones pretty soon. And Raytheon, who we know,
the defense company,
defense company, But
so the big news, what is it?
Yeah,
we all know that.
But look, on the back of all of that, it was kind of overshadowed, the results, by the fact that they announced that they were buying Slack.
How much?
For a whopping 27.7 billion, which is one of the biggest software transactions in history. I mean, we talked about the IBM acquisition of Red Hat, just tipping 30 billion. They've had previous decent sized acquisitions. They bought Tableau, which I just mentioned.
That's incredible.
Mentioned Slack, earlier. Yeah. They bought Tableau for 16 billion. I'd previously bought MuleSoft for 6.5 billion or something like that.
I've used Slack, and I can't believe it's worth that much money.
Yeah, because I've used Slack too in a previous life, and it was for internal messaging and sharing, and you'd set up little groups and you'd set up private groups and public groups, but you couldn't actually talk to other companies. You wouldn't use it to set up a Teams call with a client.
Maybe you can now. But maybe that's where they go. I mean, they don't have a solution
for development companies.
Yeah, but they don't have a solution like Teams.
So this is it.
This is it. They're going after them.
But on the back of the news, their stock price tanked by $45.
What?
Yeah, they've lost 18.7 billion was wiped off their share price yesterday.
What? Why don't the market like it?
Because they think they may have overpaid. Slack is a company that's been, it's losing money.
That's punishment for
obviously, they're in a very aggressive, market. They're going to go up against. It's a big market, okay. It's a $25 billion market for Microsoft. It's a $330 billion market probably overall.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of talk about the fact that they, overpaid for it. paying 27.7 billion, maybe overpaid by about 3 billion for it. But also maybe it's to do with the fact that Mark Benioff said it was a bad time to buy companies only last quarter. He actually said, I'm going to read it so that I get this right. He said it's unlikely you will see us do a large M&A in this environment. That's what he said last quarter. And now he's saying, which is quite funny, this is a match made in heaven. Together, Salesforce and Slack will shape the future of enterprise software. So I think maybe, it's a bit flip-floppy. Last quarter, he was saying the environment wasn't right for acquisitions, and now he's saying it's the best thing.
Oh, he's like a politician.
He's like a politician.
But what's happened to, let's say, the big guys independent? Who's that? Zoom? What are they? And others who are not owned by somebody yet? Yeah, so, are they going up?
So Zoom results came out as well, actually. So they're also end of October.
I know the results went down the day the actual vaccine was announced there.
Well, the big thing is about the vaccine, right? Yeah. So what happens to these, work from home stocks because of the vaccine? If you go back to some kind of new normal, I mean, we have a decent sized office, and as you know, it's kind of partially full, but people want to come back to work. Eventually, you do, and we hope that they do. But their stock was down 13%. I mean, their numbers are also mind numbing to the extreme. So they're up 368% year on year. With revenues
even after the reduction when Pfizer came back.
Yeah, they're to finish the quarter $777 million. Same quarter last year, $166 million.
Oh,
that's crazy. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Net income of nearly $200 million.
Can you find their sales guys?
I don't know how they sell. I must look at their sales model. But they're only guiding. When I say only guiding, they're only guiding $806 million for Q4. But the talk is basically that they're overpriced. They're trading about 50 times revenue, which is kind of, albeit the revenue is up 400% year on year, but the stock price is taking a little bit of a hit. I think people are thinking they're overpriced. If you compare them to something like DocuSign, they're a 30x revenue.
30x revenue,
whereas Slack is 50x. So it doesn't feel.
I'd say Walmart would like a valuation like that, all right? 30x revenue.
Yeah, different business, but the S&P itself is only trading at up 1.5% since the start of the year. So it does look like they're overpriced. Yeah, and there's really stiff competition from Microsoft, from Google, from Facebook, and now from Salesforce. So and we'll all be using these stay-at-home products to the extent that we are now in, let's say, 12 months time or 18 months time. I mean, you got to factor in the future. So I'm not so sure, but still some crazy numbers out there for Zoom on the Q3 results.
And we know numbers for Oracle this quarter. So there's nothing there.
No, just December we'll have the next.
Right.
So results this month, and we'll probably talk about those in January.
That's a shame. So we've no Oracle stories, do we?
Well, there's a couple of Oracle stories.
Oh, do we? Oh, cool.
Yeah. So there was nothing particularly salacious on the rumor front with Larry, but I found a nice little story online about this banking software company F&I. I'm not sure if you know about them, but it's something that will be close to our heart. They dodged a licensing bullet of about $2 million by moving to the cloud and shifting away from on-prem Oracle database. So what they had previously done is they'd moved away from Oracle to MariaDB, and now they've gone to MariaDB's database as a service. It's kind of based on SQL in the cloud. But the big thing is that what they saw is unreasonable licensing requirements from Oracle. Surprise, surprise. And what is that down to? That's down to the fact that as they upgraded their environment and rebuilt their infrastructure, and they were running their software on more powerful cores, even though they were only using part of the available capacity of the server infrastructure, which they only needed to use part of it, they're being charged for the full potential capacity of the core. So it was getting up to something like $47,000.
It's all the same tricks
per core.
It's all the same tricks. I mean, it's unbelievable that these guys are doing this. I mean, more and more action needs to happen against these guys. I mean, I'm delighted that these guys have done that. FNI have done something like that. We're obviously seeing a lot of that stuff here in Europe. Obviously, the likes of Google are getting targeted. You've heard about the antitrust case. There's a coalition of 135 companies who got together here in Europe, mostly European. There's a couple of non-European companies in there who've been hammered by Google competitively. So they're actually they're urging the European Commission to take an antitrust case against Google. They've got people like Booking.com, Expedia. So these guys in the travel industry, Kayak. You've got people like Yelp. TripAdvisor. They're claiming that Google is in violation of competition directives around their with their shopping piece. Now, the Commission actually did give a fine already to Google, which was 2.42 billion euros. So it's like whatever, nearly 2.8 billion.
Did they pay it?
Actually, it's a good question. I don't know, but I suspect not. They never pay these things.
They fight them in court.
They fight them. Maybe. Actually, it's funny. It's a bit like the drugs money. You wonder what happens to it. The drug cash. You see all this cash on the table.
I think it goes into escrow, and then they fight it for the next 20 years. You know, so
we should give it back to people.
Yeah, we could ask Pam in a few minutes. Where does this money go?
Where does this money go? Yeah. So that's a very interesting one, and I think it's something. Maybe I liked your unreasonable licensing requirements from Oracle piece there.
Yeah, it's a nice touch, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's other guys doing some of that stuff as well, isn't that right? There's the I didn't know if you saw the story. Actually, SAP we don't have stories in SAP, but we do have one story in SAP.
We've one story in SAP, which is they're being investigated for potential securities fraud.
That's the one, yeah. The Portney law firm, isn't it?
Portney law firm, and a cluster of other law firms as well seem to be on the back. But again, this comes on the back of, just referring back to episode 18 again for a moment. They had the worst performance in a decade for SAP last quarter, so we'll see what happens in the next quarter. But they also had falling revenues. Their cloud was down, their operating profit was down. But where the lawsuit seems to be targeting is the decrease in their software license revenue, which was down 23% year on year, and their market cap dropped by a whopping $50. So they went from 50 billion, the market valuation. So they went from 180 billion there or thereabouts to 129 billion on the back of Q3. So that's 50 billion wiped off the share price. So the Portney Law firm, I think they're LA based, and some other companies are essentially,
they're trying to pull together. It's not actually
it's like a class action.
Yeah, they're trying to find people. So they're saying, they're putting their hand up saying, we're prepared to go for this.
Yeah,
you guys,
can sign up.
Who's out there?
Yeah, and if you go to their website, you can kind of sign up to the class action. But it's basically saying that they gave false or misleading statements in relation to the company's declining licensing revenues, which, as I said, was down 23%, but it led to a drop of 50 billion in the stock price. So if you're an investor, you'd be pretty miffed that you didn't get a forewarning of this coming. The next day, I mean, if you look at, it's interesting to look at some of the graphs, when you look at this stuff.
And we've seen some pension funds do this as well, go after them because they're misquoting some of their license revenue. They're claiming it to be cloud, and there's all sorts.
They give the wrong guidance.
I mean, it's next to impossible to find a culprit in this stuff, isn't it? Because nobody wants to. Eventually, all these big corporates, they don't really want to go through a whole rigmarole of going to court.
Yeah, I don't know what happens to these class action suits, but
actually, it's a good question to ask our guest, and she's coming in here. So I will introduce Pam. Pam, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Lovely to have you, Pam. I'll give a quick introduction to for you that I have here. We've come across each other. We've interacted online mostly, exclusively today. But I love your background. You're specialised in intellectual property, as I mentioned. I see you've copyright, trademark, patent infringement, and trade secrets. I love trade secrets. And you've been, you've got involved in lots of commercial litigation. You're familiar with Oracle. You're even technical virtualization. Fair play. I mean, that's so you'll understand the ins and outs of that, which is tricky. And I know you've got a background in some of the bigger firms in the US, Jones Day, DLA Piper, and Denton. So we are delighted to have you as our guest here. Tell us, one of the stories that Brendan raised a moment ago was and I'm going to go to it straight away, was the FNI deal where they claimed against Oracle unreasonable licensing requirements from Oracle. Now, I know we don't want to pick on a particular company, but we see this all the time, Pam. Is this normal in other industries, do you think? Or is it just the sort of thing that we come to expect in the software world, and particularly the mega vendor software world? What's your view on that?
I think that it is particularly bad in the enterprise software world. And I think that there are companies out there that haven't been as aggressive as the Oracles and the Quests and the Micro Focuses, and they're actually starting to rethink their strategy, and they may become more aggressive. But we are basically retained by companies all over the United States and even in Canada and Europe and the Middle East, and they've gone through these audits and have been presented with a shock number, and that shock number is used as leverage to try to get them to do a software purchase, and the shock number has no basis in reality. And it's surprising to me the number of companies that will actually, decide not to retain legal counsel or technical experts to help them, but they try to go it on their own, and then they end up paying literally millions upon millions of dollars that they don't owe. And had they just pushed back a little bit, they would have been able to avoid paying.
And that shock number, I mean, it sounds like it's just, if you look at the story around the Portney Law class action attempt and where that may go, we may wait and see. But the claims around issuing false or misleading statements or failure to disclose information, we've seen previous cases where that have come in the news around pension funds. I think I mentioned earlier to Brendan as we're joining us. That have taken action because of misleading reporting, and now you're talking about shock numbers that have no basis, and then if you add to that the potential that other software firms see this as a route, it's almost like it's verging on criminality, is it not?
It really is, and it's the extent of the overreach is just shocking. I mean, you were talking about this Portnoy law firm looking to maybe file a class action against SAP, and they're looking for potential plaintiffs, investors who feel they may have been defrauded. But there's actually been that pension fund litigation, that's the Sunrise Firefighters litigation, pending out here in California against Oracle, and there's been multiple motions to dismiss. And it may be, because I listened in on a hearing, that lawsuit, which alleges that that Oracle basically inflated its cloud sales by using oppressive audits to shake down customers. It's called the audit bargain close tactic, so that they go in with these shock numbers. They basically say, you can get out from under this for this, this $20 million payment. You can get out from under that, pay us a cool $5 million. And by the way, part of that, you need to buy our cloud. And according to the complaint, and what I've heard from or read and know from folks, people didn't even want that cloud, and they never even used that cloud. And the cloud literally, the cloud credits just stayed on the shelves, but it was still part of what they had to pay to get out from under the audit. And so that's what that litigation in Northern California is about. But, unfortunately, there are very technical legal requirements that a plaintiff's firm must meet in order to successfully maintain a case like that. And it looks like the judge may not think that the plaintiffs in that case tied the false statements, the alleged false statements, to some of the key players like they would need to.
Okay.
And so they could lose that suit.
Okay. I mean, I'm fascinated with the use of the term an audit bargain close tactic. It sounds like it's a sales. Did they get sales training on this, or where? Actually, do you mind me asking where did you come across? I haven't heard that phrase before, but it's a fascinating phrase and quite scary at the same time.
I'll send you guys the lawsuit when we're done with this. But it's I think it's 100 and something page complaint, class action complaint for securities fraud, brought against Oracle, Larry Ellison, other high ups in the management of Oracle. And it discusses, they basically have found former Oracle employees who know firsthand about these audit bargain close tactics and have written about it in this complaint and are prepared to testify that audits were triggered against customers when customers say they don't want to buy more software, or maybe they're going to cancel maintenance. And according to the complaint, Oracle goes in, does this audit, comes up with the shock number, and then basically uses that shock number as leverage to try to get the best possible cloud purchase that they could. Yeah. And it sets it all out in great detail. It's very, very interesting reading.
We had a number of employees here. I don't know whether you know, Oracle run their one of their European sales outfits from Dublin in Ireland, where we are. And I'm talking maybe 12 years ago, a number of our kind of inside sales representatives were hired by Oracle. And this, I'm going back, what it'll be 2020, I'm probably 15 years ago. So this is 15 or more years ago, 2005, maybe 2006. And I remember meeting two of them over Christmas, actually, bumped into them. I said, how are you getting on with your new job? What are you doing? And they said to me that I said, what are you selling for Oracle? They were selling what they called compliance solutions. And I said, oh, right, that's very interesting. What do Oracle have in the... I thought it was something to do with, I think at around the time, Sarbanes-Oxley or maybe some things like that were coming out. I thought it might have been something to do with that, a piece of software to help people with compliance. And they said, no. They said what they were doing, and this was anecdotally, but this is what they were telling me their job was to find people that they felt they had a way of finding out who might not be in compliance with the number of licenses that they should have. And they had certain tactics that they used to actually identify those companies. And there were certain triggers like data center move, or at that stage virtualization was relatively new. Those sort of tactics, but they looked to identify, and they had ways of finding out where people were doing that. The minute they knew, they'd wait and then they'd hit them. Right. Knowing that, it's another way, knowing that the customer did not know, because licensing, as you know, is very complex.
Right. Very, very. And unfortunately, what we see is that companies, Oracle and others. Oracle's not the only offender. There are many others.
Yeah, for sure. We're picking on Oracle here, but there's others. Yeah, as you say. Yeah.
Others, and what they do is they go in, they take out to lunch some of the folks that work in the IT department, and they give them free meals, and it's all to extract information so that they can figure out, if there's been changes that could end up in a big payday for, the software vendor.
Yeah.
And one of the things that folks should do is companies might want to control that access and have a policy in place that people shouldn't be just telling Oracle or SAP or these other vendors a lot of confidential information about your company, because it's going to be used against you down the road.
Yeah. No, we always tell people, be careful what you say, and it's in the world of IBM as well. We often say to people, have you got IBM staff on the ground? Be careful what you tell them, because you need to understand your true position before you start opening up the situation to them. It is interesting, though, from a legal perspective, Pam, I get your view on this. We wouldn't have seen this activity, this sort of amount of legal activity historically in this place. I'm sure these issues were there. Go back to even 2005, 2006. You would not have seen these things going to court or going to class action. It is much more. It seems much more that the end users, the customers of these companies, are actually much more prepared to defend themselves on these topics now, aren't they? And why is that, do you think?
Well, that's right. And because, the amount of money at stake is so high. There's this case pending now in the Midwest here in the United States, where Fairview, which is like a hospital type system, decided to go off Quest software. And they sent them a notice that they were going to be canceling maintenance and support. I think in December of 2019, they sent that notice, and instantly then got an audit notice. And basically, after the audit, Quest came up with some huge compliance gap to try to keep them basically continuing to pay the maintenance and support and staying within under threat of a huge licensing penalty. And Fairview decided, you know what, we're not going to take this. And they took them to court for a declaratory judgment action, which is now pending. And they said basically, and this is very interesting because I think that, Oracle and others are guilty of this, that they brought in, software, which they used in the audit, that actually was not looking to see where the software was actually being used, which is what causes the licensing fee to be incurred, but trying to figure out the entire system so they could charge a licensing fee even on servers where the software wasn't being used. And you're probably familiar that this is exactly the VMware virtualization argument that Oracle tries to use, even though in our view, the contract, the installed and/or running language of the contract is what governs, and not, so they have to focus on where the software is being used, not where it could be used in the future. But these software companies are trying to get a licensing fee for basically non-use of their software. And again, the stakes are so high, there's so much money, and finally companies are saying, we're not going to do this, and we're going to fight back, and that'll make them, less of a target, I think, in the future. And I'd like to see more of it, not less, because these software vendors have got to be held to account for this literally global activity that they're doing all around the world, where they're just ripping companies off, in my view. And, that lawsuit that is pending here in the Northern District, it's just a textbook example of what we're seeing. And, I think you're going to see more and more companies pushing back, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, great. And Pam, one of the stories that, I've obviously read with a lot of interest, read it a few times, is the IBM, IRS, story. That sounds like a classic audit bargain close story to me, if ever there was one.
Yeah, I mean, that is such an ugly situation. And I actually have a blog post on that. Really kind of sets out in detail what happened. But that one was actually a whistleblower that filed a lawsuit in D.C. He worked for IBM. He was on the audit team. And I guess the overreaches against the Internal Revenue Service were so bad that he just couldn't stomach them, and he blew the whistle. And the facts of that complaint are really, really egregious, where IBM knew the Internal Revenue Service made the mistake of telling them that they were thinking about going off and, the IBM software. IBM decided to do an audit. They basically said, we just want to help you deploy, more economically. And in reality, it wasn't about helping them. It was about getting together a new software purchase. So the IBM employee blew the whistle, filed this lawsuit, and according to the allegations of the suit, IBM basically really was only owed about $500,000, but they ended up concocting this entire scheme where they got millions upon millions of dollars from the IRS when the IRS didn't even really owe it. And
it was a staggering amount of money. I mean,
staggering. And as an American taxpayer and a citizen, I mean, it is just outrageous. And but they ended up losing that because the court looked at it and said that he couldn't believe that the IRS would really pay that amount of money if they didn't owe it.
Yeah.
Well,
it was so unbelievable.
Yeah. I mean, I see it all the time in these audits where, people will try to go it alone and they'll pay, maybe it's not 150 million, but maybe they pay 3 million when they don't owe, anything but maybe 400,000, so people will pay. And, there are all kinds of reasons why people might not want to litigate. And that's clearly what happened here. So, I'm really hoping there was the oral argument in that case last month, or actually in October. It's pending, and the judges will be deciding. And I just really hope that Mr. Cimino gets his day in court.
Yeah, but all you'd need in that case is, even if you didn't bring in the lawyers, if you had a good audit defense company, they'd be able to look at the reports and see that the numbers were fabricated. It just, yeah, it's hard to believe they got away with it, to be honest.
But too many companies, in our experience, they don't bring the right expertise in.
Yeah.
It is hard to find the expertise. You're a skill that you have, Pam, is not 10 a penny out there. It's tricky to find. You'll find lawyers who maybe understand things, but you need experience to know what are the tricks that these guys try.
Yeah, so many, and that's why we know what the playbook is, and that's the expertise that we can bring, to bear, and this just exacts a real human toll. Like I said, these are companies literally all over the United States and even further, and these are when they retain me and I get in there, say the first time the audits actually happen, these people are just shell shocked by what they went through. I feel like I spend my first, hour on the phone with them just kind of being a counselor because they've been through such a bad experience. And it takes a human toll because when the head of IT, when they are presented with a $20 million compliance gap bill, they lose their job. And so it's upsetting. And these companies that are really, they're doing a disservice to the people that, are out there working and just trying to make a living and trying to be honest. For the most part, people aren't intentionally using this software and trying to commit a copyright infringement. So it's really interesting. And I'm just, there is a human element, and I'm glad that we're able to save people some money. And also, oftentimes show that they really didn't mess up. Like, the software vendor would like the management of that company to believe.
Yeah, and people's jobs are on the potentially on the line here as well when you think about it. I genuinely hope it these sort of stories and these sort of successes really embolden others to come out, because that's what the industry needs. The industry needs, like you mentioned at the beginning, other companies, other software firms looking at the tactics that the likes of Oracle, and we mentioned IBM's there, and Quest and others who have done the same thing. They think this is a route to make money, and what needs to happen is the customers need to demonstrate, with the help of the legislators. To be honest with you, there is help, and you were starting to see that as well with some of the other cases that are going on. I mean, there are other cases. I mean, I wonder, are there cases out there that you think could have a real change to some of these big tech companies? Are there other ones out there that spring to mind in your view, other than the ones we've mentioned?
Right. Well, obviously Oracle versus Google. I think that's the big giant case, and that has now been argued before the Supreme Court. From what I've read and have been able to tell, there seemed to be a lot of sympathy for Oracle's position, and if Oracle wins that, because that's been up and down and tried, and the jury that tried it here in the Northern District of California found that Google had used the APIs and that it was a fair use, that it wasn't a copyright infringement. But the Federal Circuit overturned that. And so now we're up at the Supreme Court. And, I think that if Oracle wins, boy, look out, because, the Java audits have not started yet, but they will in earnest. And people need to be protecting themselves now. Because it is a possibility, I think, that Oracle could win that lawsuit.
Right, that's going to be scary. That's going to be scary for a lot of people. So I think we might end up seeing something different happen in the back of that regard. I mean, my experience I think when you look at David versus Goliath battles, oftentimes if David wins, it's kind of like, well done. But when two Goliaths like Google and Oracle go to battle, there's a lot of collateral damage regardless of who wins. So I think I would be hopeful that actually, even though there's a potential downside, as you described with Java audits, I actually think what we'll end up seeing is potentially benefits and in the longer term. I am conscious of your time, Pam, and the show's coming to a close. I'd love to ask you your final question. You're obviously in this space a long time. I've read a lot of your blogs and your writings on these topics, and I love it, and I encourage everyone to listen. Is there anything particular you're working on at the moment that you'd like to tell our listeners?
No, it's just I handle multiple audits at the same time. So I've just got, I don't know, I'm probably handling 10, 15 audits right now. And I would just say, if you're a company and you're audited by one of these software publishers, don't try to go it on your own. Hire people that know what they're doing so they can help you to position you to come out of the audit without spending a ton of money, and even better, hire people before you get the audit notice. That wouldn't be me, but technical consultants that can come in and look at your environment and clean you up so that that you can't be exploited.
Yep.
But at some point, you got to prepare, and I would say you got to fight back, because if you don't, then you're just going to be easy pickings, and they're going to be right back knocking at your door a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's always prevention is better than cure, isn't it? So we'll look forward to seeing that. Listen, Pam, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. We will stay in touch. Brendan, we're at the end of our show again.
Yeah, another one. That was really good. I really enjoyed that, Pam. Thank you.
Yeah, do we have another one gone? But we're going to have a little Christmas special, just you and I.
Right.
No guests. We'll have a little ding-dong, go through the stories of the year.
A roundup.
We might even bring a little Christmas jumper or two into the office and see how we get on.
Or a little dram.
Yes, it'll be episode 20. We'll bring it out in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, very good.
So
Look forward to that.
Until then, thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah.
Thanks to Pam as well.
Again, Pam.
And I really enjoyed that. Thank you. Take care.
See you next time.